Christmas is a very special time in Fluffy Gardens. Everyone gets together to sing songs, eat good food, and give each other wonderful presents. If it snows, which sometimes it does, everyone goes outside and builds snowmen. Some might even have snowball fights. Very gently, of course, as they don't want anyone to get hurt. Does that sound like Christmas where you are? It is a very special time, isn't it? Our story begins just 3 days before Christmas. Snow covered the green hills and the sparkle of frost glittered. The air was crisp with a gentle cold breeze. Paolo the cat walked through town wearing a big soft scarf, a woolly hat and a smile. He was very excited because today, just 3 days before Christmas, he would post his letter to Santa Claus. He gripped it very tightly, then popped it in the letterbox. Now, when the penguin postman delivers my letter to Santa, he'll know just what I'd like for Christmas, thought Paolo happily. Then he skipped off to the bakery to get some Christmas cake. Paolo liked cake. But the bakery was closed and the little penguin baker wasn't there. Paolo looked around. The egg shop was closed. No penguin there either. In fact, all the shops were closed. Paolo gasped. "Ah, the penguins have disappeared," he said. And he was right. There wasn't a penguin to be found anywhere in Fluffy Gardens. Paolo suddenly had a terrible thought. He ran to the post office and knocked on the door. No answer. "Even the penguin postman is gone," he cried. And if the postman was gone, that meant "Santa won't get my letter," shouted Paolo, horrified. That morning, Paolo the cat ran around Fluffy Gardens telling everyone he could find that the penguins had vanished. "Santa won't get our letters," he said to Babs the baby bird. "He won't know what we'd like for Christmas."
"But Santa is magic,"
said Babs.
"I think he knows everything."
"Well," said Paolo, "if he doesn't get our letters, I don't see how he could know." This was a disaster. With the penguins gone, no shops were open and they couldn't get all the things they needed for Christmas, not even Christmas cake. Worst of all, nobody in Fluffy Gardens would get any presents from Santa. Christmas was ruined. Everyone was very upset. Later that day, at Paolo's house on Fishden Street, Paolo the cat and wee Reg the puppy had a mug of warm milk together.
"We have to do something,"
said wee Reg. Paolo nodded in agreement. "We have to find the penguins," said Paolo.
"You're right,"
said wee Reg.
"I'll look at my house and you look here."
"I don't think that will do it," said Paolo as he pulled a book from his shelf. It was a big book about animals. He flicked through it until he found a page on penguins. "It says here that penguins like very cold places."
"Maybe they've gone somewhere even colder than Fluffy Gardens,"
offered wee Reg. "Maybe they have," said Paolo excitedly. The next morning, just 2 days before Christmas, Paolo the cat gathered some friends together to go and find the penguins. Paolo unrolled a large map and pointed to frosty mountains at the very edge of Fluffy Gardens. If there was anywhere colder than Fluffy Gardens, that's where it would be. Perhaps there they would find the penguins. While wee Reg stayed to try and cheer everybody up, Paolo the cat, the small green thing, and Lola the mosquito went to the train station. But, of course, with the penguins gone, the trains weren't running, or the buses, or the taxis. They would have to walk all the way to Frosty Mountains. But just as they set off, George the mean yellow dog drove by in his car. Paolo shouted after him, "George, could you please give us a lift to Frosty Mountains? You know, to find the penguins and save Christmas."
"I'm busy," said George, "and I hate Christmas."
Then he drove off. And so the friends began walking. Well, Paolo walked. The small green thing bounced, and Lola the Mosquito flipped and flopped in a very silly manner. They laughed and played together on the way, enjoying the snow and the adventure. But by the time they stopped for lunch, they had only made it as far as Blueberry Forest. They would never be able to walk all the way to Frosty Mountains, or bounce, or even flip-flop. And that's when they heard a bell. Something was coming towards them. It was Pertree the bear, on his little bicycle. Pertree gently parked his bicycle by a tree and said hello to the friends in his loud and booming voice.
"Hello."
"Hello, Pertree," said Paolo. Paolo looked at Pertree's bicycle and had an idea. "We can cycle to Frosty Mountains." But the bicycle was too small to fit all of them on it. If only it had a little trailer, they could all sit in the back while Pertree cycled. The clever thing to do," said Paolo, "would be to get help. Pertree, could I please borrow your bicycle?" Pertree nodded. Then Paolo hopped on the bike and cycled away. He visited Sebastian the kangaroo, who had a set of wheels in his big red bag. He visited Polly the pelican, who had found wooden boards washed up on the beach. And he visited Stinky the skunk, who helped Paolo put it all together carefully and safely. Monty the goat even painted the trailer all bright with dazzling festive patterns.
"Now all you need is reindeer to pull it," he said.
"Pertree and his bicycle will have to do for now," said Paolo with a smile. When Paolo returned to Blueberry Forest, the friends were overjoyed to see the colourful sleigh behind Pertree's bike. They jumped in, and Pertree cycled through the forest and out towards Frosty Mountains with a happy grin. They travelled on and on over the snowy hills. Eventually, they reached a cabin. Quite a cozy cabin. The door opened and a smiling face greeted the friends. It was Aunt Snug the sheep. Aunt Snug lived in Frosty Mountains at the very edge of Fluffy Gardens. And that meant they had finally arrived. Aunt Snug invited them all in for some hot chocolate. They listened to Pertree tell a wonderful story about Christmas while they warmed themselves up. It can get very cold traveling out in the snow. When they were all rested, they left Cozy Cabin and set out over the mountains. Nobody in Fluffy Gardens had ever traveled this far. When they reached the highest peak, they were amazed at what they could see. It was a small village, a place a little like Fluffy Gardens, but much, much colder. and full of people Paolo didn't know. But then, Paolo saw someone he did know. A penguin. Actually, all the penguins. Every single one of them. Paolo the cat ran down to the village happily, followed by the small green thing and Lola the mosquito. "Oh, hello," said one of the penguins. "What brings you here?" "We came to get you," said Paolo with a smile, "so you could deliver our letters to Santa and help us with Christmas like you always do." "Oh, really?" said the penguin. "But we're on holiday. We're not going back for another week." "But Christmas will be over," said Paolo, a little upset. "And Santa Claus won't get our letters. Nobody will have presents and Christmas will be ruined." "I'm terribly sorry," said the penguin. "We did leave a note." "Really?" asked Paolo. "Oh, yes. We asked Bill the platypus to tell everyone about it." "Bill the very forgetful platypus?" "Yes, that's him. Anyway, mustache. Lots to do," said the penguin, and he turned and ran off. Bill must have forgotten to tell anyone about the note. Paolo began to walk away with tears in his eyes when one of the villagers called out to him. "Happy Christmas!" shouted Belinda the narwhal happily. But Paolo didn't feel like it was a very happy Christmas at all. In fact, it was a terrible Christmas. Without the penguins, their letters would never get to Santa. The shops would stay closed and nobody would be able to get anything for Christmas, like Christmas pudding or Christmas cake. "I like cake," said Paolo sadly. "We'll just have to go home and tell the others that the penguins aren't coming back." By the time they arrived back at Cozy Cabin, it was getting late and the sky was getting dark. Aunt Snug made them a nice supper, and soon it was time for bed. The next morning was Christmas Eve, just one day before Christmas, and the friends set off towards home. Back in Fluffy Gardens, Reg the Puppy was building snowmen with his friends, while Chuckles the chicken told jokes he had read in some crackers. Mia the tapir was dancing in the snow, laughing every time she fell over. Sparkles the monkey was talking, as usual. And George the mean yellow dog was busy. Reg wagged his little tail happily when he saw the friends arriving and gave them all big hugs as they stepped off the sleigh. Paolo, the small green thing, and Lola told everyone about their journey over frosty mountains and the cold village they found. Trying to hide the tears in his eyes, Paolo explained that the penguins wouldn't be back for another week. Their letters wouldn't get to Santa, the shops would stay closed, and Christmas would be ruined. "Without the penguins, I don't know what we can do," he said.
We could
suggested a tiny voice.
do things ourselves.
"Excuse me?" asked Paolo, trying to see who had spoken. It was Babs the baby bird.
Well, we can't get our letters to Santa and the shops are closed, but we could make each other presents,
she said.
I could bake a Christmas cake,
said Rex the pig. I could make some decorations, said Stinky the skunk.
I've got some holly wreaths in my garden,
said Mr. Johnson the panda. I just love to pinch things, said Cornelius the crab, who hadn't really been listening. We can do it ourselves, they all said.
It will be like an adventure,
shouted Max the zebra. They all cheered. Except for George, who said he was busy, and then added,
I hate Christmas.
And so everyone, except George, set to work to make this Christmas the best Christmas there had ever been in Fluffy Gardens. Even lazy Lenny the Octopus helped out.
I just love Christmas,
he said with excitement. It was a busy day for everyone. And on the night of Christmas Eve, Fluffy Gardens looked glorious. There were Christmas lights everywhere, and everyone wore big, beamy smiles. It would be a great Christmas. But they had been so busy all day, there had been no time to make each other presents. And now it was too late. If only Santa had got our letters, said Paolo, sitting down with Babs the baby bird. Do you really think he's magic? He asked.
Oh, yes,
said Babs. Paolo hoped that Babs was right. Before long, everyone in Fluffy Gardens tucked themselves up for sleep. Well, not everyone. See, even though he said he hated Christmas, and even though he didn't help prepare the decorations or the food, someone had been busy all day finding the best presents for each and everyone in Fluffy Gardens. Busy for the last few days, actually. Who could that be? It was George. That night, George visited everyone in Fluffy Gardens and left a nice present under their tree. He gave Una the owl a book of songs. He gave Tootie the elephant a new tennis racket. He gave Mavis the pony a packet of plasters. He didn't hate Christmas after all. He just wanted to surprise everyone. As Paolo the cat was curled up in his bed, ready for sleep, he heard a sound. What could that be? He wondered. But then he thought, it's Christmas Eve. It's very late. It's just got to be Santa Claus. Paolo jumped out of bed and peeked from his bedroom door. But it wasn't Santa Claus. It was George, leaving him a stinky fish. That's very nice of George, said Paolo. But he was disappointed that Santa hadn't come. And just as he was about to get back into bed, he heard something else. It sounded like sleigh bells. Paolo ran to his window. Sweeping across the night sky was something that looked a little like Pertree's sleigh, only this was flying, pulled by reindeer. It's Santa, whispered Paolo, with the biggest, hugest, beamy smile he had ever smiled. Babs was right. He is magic. Paolo gave Santa a little wave and then jumped into bed, almost too excited to sleep. And the next morning, Christmas Day in Fluffy Gardens, Paolo the cat ran to his tree, eager to see what Santa had left him. He picked up the present from Santa and unwrapped it. It was a book. Felis Quadraticus, Equations for the Advanced Cat. Paolo was over the moon. Santa knew exactly what I wanted, said Paolo happily. When they all gathered that afternoon in Blueberry Forest to sing carols, everyone was talking about how Santa came and left them exactly what they wanted, and how a mysterious someone left such thoughtful gifts. George the mean yellow dog laughed to himself, thinking nobody would suspect it was he who left the gifts. That is, until Paolo the cat ran up to him and gave him a big hug. Oh, thank you for my stinky fish and all our thoughtful presents. Happy Christmas, he said. Before long, everyone was hugging George. You made this the best Christmas ever, they said. George smiled a little smile. We all did, he said. Paolo the cat smiled, thinking to himself just how lucky they all were to spend Christmas together. Then he tucked into a big slice of yummy Christmas cake, and Una the owl began to sing. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Then, through the trees came the penguin postman. Delivery! It was the biggest Christmas tree that anyone had ever seen. You came back, said Paolo happily. Not just me, said the postman, as all the penguins came running through the forest. Well, we can hardly let you decorate this beautiful tree on your own now, could we? Happy Christmas from Fluffy Gardens.